Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. Today I'm working on some rug hooking mysteries, and I'm trying to answer the eternal question, how does it hook? Because I too, we're moving into fall. I'm looking at some tweeds and herringbones and plaids and different patterned wools. And even though I have a vague idea of how each of them might hook as I introduce them into my rug hooking projects, I'm not really sure. So instead of doing samples of absolutely everything every time I work, I'm going to put together a sample board that we can all use. And when you see the outcome for the particular pieces of fabric I've got here, maybe it'll help all of us to figure out, how does it hook? So for example, I'm looking at a collection of materials here, and I'm talking about rug hooking, right? And each of these is quite different. So I'm looking at them and thinking, for example, this one here is like a very interesting window pane plaid with 3 colors. Like, it looks like it might be over dyed. This looks like it has the potential to be quite busy, quite exciting for a fall piece. This one is a little less busy, a little bit larger of a plaid, right? It repeats a lot less often. So making it a larger print, but you can see how all of these are a little bit different. This has got a real vertical herringbone feel to it, a much more small scale checkered plaid, a traditional black watch, a stripy stripe, just plain old stripy stripe. How often will those loops come off and be the blue part? That is the question, isn't it? Same with this yellow one. This has got a different sort of directional print with the stripes, the lighter yellow plus the darker. How often will that repeat the darks? Is that going to be confusing, or is it going to be lovely? It's going to be hard to tell until we hook it, right? Here's another interesting plaid. These are all ones that are a little bit different. Many of these are from door wool. Some are from thrifty fabrics and clothing that I've cut up. Very small window pane, right? A little bit of shadow effect. This has got a nice kind of ombre feel to it. This is very subtle, but you can see it has got the ivory color with the pistachio color. This really colorful signature door plaid. That will be an interesting one to see how that hooks up. Another brown, but with a lot of other colors happening, so it has potential to be busy. A very light kind of Eastery plaid. So the question will be, how did these 16 materials hook up? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them, and I'm going to hook each one into a square onto my backing so we can see how each one looks once it's hooked up. We're going to do this together. Now, I've cut all of my pieces up, for the most part, into number 8 strips, right? So I've got them all ready to go, and now we are ready for that million-dollar question, and that is,
a stick, a stone, it's the end of the road, it's the rest of the stump, it's a little alone, it's a sliver of glass, it is life, it's the sun, it is night, it is death, it's a trap, it's a gun, the oak when it blooms, the fox in the brush, the nut in the wood, the song of the thrush, the wood of the wind, a cliff, a fall, a scratch, a lump, it is nothing at all, it's the wind blowing free, it's the end of the slope, it's a beam, it's a void, it's a hunch, it's a hope, and the riverbank talks of the waters of March. It's the end of the strain, it's a joy in your heart. The foot, the ground, the flesh and the bone, the beat of the road, a slingshot stone, a fish, a flash, a silvery glow, a fight, a bet, the range of a bow, the bed of the well, the end of the line, the dismay in the face, it's a loss, it's a find, a spear, a spike, a point, a nail, a drip, a drop, the end of the tale, a truckload of bricks in the soft morning light, the shot of a gun in the dead of the night, a mile, a mite, a thrust, a bump, it's a girl, it's a rhyme, it's a cold, it's a mumps, the plan of the house, the body in bed, and the car that got stuck in the mud, it's the mud.
now if you can see, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this black watch blue. And the reason I'm having a little bit of trouble with it is it's a little bit thinner. It's more like a tailoring or a clothing kind of a textile than it is like a milled wool that rug hookers are sometimes more used to using. So when I'm using this, even though it's a lovely material and it's 100% wool, it is a bit more of a loose weave, and you do get that. And how do you fix that? Well, it's up to you if you want to fix that. A lot of people put wool that they have taken from recycled clothing that they found at the thrift store into the washer dryer. You can wash it multiple times. You can wash it on hot. You can dry it. You don't want it to felt, right? You don't want it to felt because then it's not usable for us as hookers. But you do want it to what's called full, F-U-L-L. So not quite felt, but you want it to full. You want it to become fuller and more like milled wool, right? Nice and fat and just plump, easier to use, easier to pull through. With loose wools like this, they are absolutely usable. It just becomes a question of they tend to break a little bit, right? Because they are looser weaves and sometimes they will not close up. It could be that there's a little bit of synthetic in here. I just don't know for sure, right? I didn't dye this one. I didn't weave this one. I don't know for sure. But what I know is I like the way it looks as it hooks. It's hooking up really nice, really, really pretty. I can see this as being a great sort of Christmas color for me, the black watch. But it is a little tougher to hook with. So it becomes a question of, does it play you so much that it drives you nuts and you can't handle it and it's not worth it? Or can you handle the bit of aggravation that it gives you and say, I like the way it looks well enough that I'm going to keep going? That's always going to be a question for you. Is it special enough and does it hook in such a way that you want to keep on going? Or when you discover that it's a little bit tougher to hook with, are you going to just cut and run and say, yep, nope, I got enough problems without this? Up to you. Now you can see I am getting some little pops of black here, not very often, but it is exciting when it happens. This is also like a plaid, right? So you might think, oh, that must be another clothing kind of textile, but it's really not. This is more of like a heavy, still pretty open weave wool, pretty loosely woven, but it hooks up really well. And having that little interrupted stripe, the little black bumblebee kind of a stripe, is really charming. It's a lot of fun to look for, to wait for. It makes hooking fun, that's for sure. Now you can see this green one is hooking up really nice. It's similar to the one above it in its scale. This green strikes me as being a little bit different because I feel like it's over dyed. And I'm going to show you what I mean. When you look at it and it has this kind of color variation, you see how there's a little bit of light, right, in some areas? That says to me it's probably over dyed, which is very nice because I have a lot of material like these here, right, these three kind of light wools that I plan to over dye, kind of window panes, and this is an odd dock right here, but they're nice light colors that will dye nicely. It is fun to find patterned wool that is ready to over dye. It's fun to hook with, and adding that little bit of extra color, you can really customize it and get it into the palette, the range of color that you mean to work in. Isn't it funny how with this white one, with these wide, sort of widely interrupted stripes, they happen hardly ever, right? These big wide stripes in this one. Isn't it interesting to see the kind of pattern that it makes, right? You can really choose where the stripes are going to fall, but it's interesting to see that that in itself creates its own funny pattern.
Afloat, adrift, a flight, a wing, a hawk, a quail, the promise of spring, and the riverbank talks of the waters of March. It's the promise of life, it's the joy in your heart. A stick, it is John, it is Joe, it's a thorn in your hand and a cut on your toe, a point, a grain, a bee, a bite, a blink, a buzzard, the a sudden stroke of night, a pin, a needle, a sting, a pain, a snail, a riddle, a wasp, a stain, a pass in the mountains, a horse and the mule. In the distance the shells rode 3 shadows of blue, and the riverbank talks of the waters of March. It's the promise of life in your heart, in your heart. A stick, a stone, the end of the road, the rest of the stump, a lonesome road, a sliver of glass, a life, the sun, a night, a death, the end of the run, and the riverbank talks of the waters of March. It's the end of the strain, it's the joy in your heart.
This project has been fast and a lot of fun. Using all these nice colors. This is what I've used right here. These are them. And I do like them against this light background too. Isn't that pretty? All the different wools. Coming over to them here, you can see I've made a nice grid for myself where I can really see how these things hook. I've got a little bit of the material and I can see how it hooks up. A little bit more subtle. This is the black watch that gave me a little trouble. I liked this one a lot. This sort of honey one. Those interrupted black spots, you get hardly any on the piece itself, right? Very few. Over here, this was another pretty one, the green, the one that we thought was over dyed. A nice sort of tight plaid, lots of color change. This one with the stripies was mostly white, and you can see the nice pattern it makes when it hooks up. This is one of the door classics, isn't it? This one here, super colorful. This is not one of my favorites somehow, but it does hook up really nice. And even doing this small repeat has a bit of a rainbow motif happening. This is a nice one too, this brown. It's got some sort of antique black in it. Very subtle, but you can see it does hook with a lot of depth, a lot of richness. This one here, this little sort of mustardy gold one, again, very subtle piece, but hooks up a real treat. Of course, these aren't blocked or pressed, or I haven't done anything here. I literally just finished hooking. I have to say I love this one here. This one was a real beauty, very easy to work with. Lots of nice colors there, a little bit of blue. And this one real subtle as well, this minty pistachio one here. Again, subtle, but it does create some texture and therefore some interest. This one too, very pretty. These are door wools, most of these. And you can, whether you go to the store or you order online, you should be able to get them unless they're discontinuing stuff. And then I don't know. It's hard to stay on top of that stuff. This is another beauty here. Very pretty colors. Unexpected, right? I think this is my favorite of the lot. This little guy, little houndstooth, right? It's almost like a suiting fabric, but it was nice and fat, plump, easy to hook with. All of these colors it made here. Isn't that lovely? And this guy here, the second to last, some orange, some mustard, some nice fall colors, created a nice little pattern. And then this guy is the last guy, some frosty touches here with these white threads running through. Isn't that interesting? Some kind of grape jam colors, some browns, and then these frosty bits here. But all in all, it was a nice experience, an experiment for me to fool around with hooking all these different fabrics, 16 different ones that I had as swatches, and to turn them into this for future reference. And if I run short on something, I'm just going to pull one of these out and use it. But at least we have this video, we can use this, refer to it, and you do get a feel certainly for how does it hook. Now we know. I will see you next time at Ribbon Candy Hooking. Take care.
A stick, a stone, it's the end of the road.